Hello everyone, welcome to ManageEngine OpManager Plus's free training series. We are so glad to have you here. Let me introduce myself. I'm Vishak. I've been working in ManageEngine for over 2 years now, and I'll be the trainer for this season's OpManager Plus free training. So this is a brand new free training and a brand new season for OpManager Plus. So let me briefly explain OpManager Plus and its feature offering. OpManager Plus is ManageEngine's unified IT operations management solution, and it can monitor and manage IT systems from the network end to the application end. It's a unified tool. So here you can see the basic differences, basic features offered by OpManager Plus, as well as the primary differences between OpManager Plus and OpManager. So OpManager Plus is an all-in-one IT solution. So that means that all the features given here are enabled by default in OpManager Plus. However, if you're only looking for some of these features, what you can do is you can opt for OpManager, which is a basic network monitoring solution, and then enable just the features that you require as add-ons. In every other way, OpManager Plus and OpManager are the same. The only key difference being that with OpManager Plus, you get everything bundled and unified together, while with OpManager, you have the choice of enabling the add-ons as you require it. So based on your preferences and your requirements, you can choose for either OpManager Plus or OpManager. This training applies for both the products. This webinar is taken in 5 parts. So the first 3 parts will constitute basic network monitoring and management. And the first part will focus on getting started with OpManager Plus. Here we'll talk about creating user profiles, setting up authentication, managing network discovery, adding devices to your monitoring inventory, and so on. Second part, we'll talk about monitoring the network and IT infrastructure. In the third part, we'll talk about how you can set up alarms, reports, and network maps. With this, we'll cover basic network monitoring and management. We'll move on to the advanced IT operations management segment of our free training series. Here, we'll talk about OpManager Plus's traffic, configuration, firewall, and IP address management features. Finally, the fifth part, we'll talk about application and user experience management. And with that, we'll cover full stack observability features in OpManager Plus. Every part will be taken in 2 times, 6 a.m. GMT and 11 a.m. EDT. So without further wait, let's get started. The part 1, getting started with OpManager Plus. This is the agenda that we'll cover in this first part. We'll start off with user management. We'll talk about user roles, authentication, different types of authentication, password policies, and so on. Then we'll talk about how you can establish communication between OpManager Plus and devices with the help of credentials. Then we'll move on to network discovery, IT infrastructure discovery, and ITOM discovery. These are different discovery mechanisms for different parts of your IT infrastructure. We'll cover all of this in detail in this particular part of the free training series. So this is the agenda, and we're going to start off right now with user management. After installing OpManager Plus in your device, and before discovering the devices that you want to monitor in the organization, the first step is to give user access privileges to the members in your organization. So as you all know, IT management and network administration is not a one-person job. It requires a team to handle this. And with OpManager Plus, you can create user profiles for each members of your team. But is it advisable to give all access to all data for all members of your team? In the modern zero trust environment, it's not advisable. So what you can do with OpManager Plus is that you can create user profiles and you can assign certain user roles to these user profiles. So the users who are like the members of your team will not have access to everything. Instead, they'll be given access to the things that they are responsible for. So in turn, this will enforce and strengthen the security policies of your organization. User management feature in OpManager helps you do this. So OpManager Plus has 3 basic user roles, and you can create as many user profiles as you require, and then you can assign roles to the profiles. So let me tell you about the user roles. There are 3 basic roles: the administrator, operator, and custom user. So firstly, we have the administrator role, who have unrestricted access to everything in OpManager Plus. Basically, they can read or write all modules. So basically, this can be given to your senior network admins or who is in charge of your organization's IT team. Usually could have the administrator role. Then we have the operator role. The operator role has read access to all the modules. So this can have multiple uses. If let's say someone from upper level management wants to review the activities of the IT team, without really changing anything. So maybe you can give this role for a user profile created for that person. Or let's say you hired someone new and you want to give them a chance to learn the ropes before you give them any serious responsibilities. Again, this will come in handy. And then we have the custom user. So the custom user role is completely customizable by the admin or the administrator. So you can configure what modules the user can access and whether they have the read and write access for it. So let me show you how this works in the product. Let's go to the product. This is a working version of OpManager Plus. So you can create and mess with user management right here under settings. Under general settings, you have user management. Select that, and you have the users, the roles, and the password policy. So users list the user profiles you created, and roles will list the different roles available in OpManager Plus. So by default, you have the administrator and operator roles. As I mentioned, administrator have read and write access to everything, and operator has read access to everything. So now let's create a custom user role to see how it's done. So let's click on add role right here, select that, and you'll be able to provide a name for your role. Let me just call this role custom user 1 for simplicity's sake. You can add a description for this role if you want. After that, you can configure what things this particular user role has access to. So let me say I want this custom user role. Whoever I'm giving this custom user role to, I want them to perform read and write actions on the dashboards and reports feature. So you can see by default, everything is listed as no access. But when I select the read and write option, read and write, and both are ticked by automatically. So this is how it works. You can select each module and you can select the things in those modules at OpManager Plus that you need to give this user role access to. So let me say I also want to give them access to compliance and security reports. So this is also ticked. After that, after you give the right access to all the configured access for each of these modules within OpManager Plus, you can simply click on save, and this particular user role will be saved. So now that we created a user role, let's associate this with a user profile. User profiles are listed under users, and select add user to add a user profile. You can select the role that you created here under role. Let me select the one that I've created, custom user. And here you have 3 modes of authentication. So this is how you can configure how this user is going to log into OpManager Plus. There's 3 options here. These are the primary authentication features in OpManager Plus. This includes local authentication, radius authentication, and AD authentication. If you choose local authentication, you can configure the username, the email ID, and password right here. And then every time the user logs in, they'll be asked to enter their email ID or username and password, and it will be verified within OpManager itself. Now, you also have the option to verify a user using their AD credentials. If you link your Active Directory, your organization's Active Directory, so far I have not linked it here, but if you linked it, you will be able to perform AD-based authentication for your users. Then let me just choose local now. Radius authentication is kind of outdated, so we're not showing it. You can provide your user name. So I'm giving the username. I'm also providing the user's email and password. And then I need to retype it. There you go. You can, if you want, you can provide additional details like phone number, mobile number, and for NetFlow module reports, you can provide a time zone. You can upload a photo, and so on. When you click on next, you will be asked to configure the scope of this user. This means that what devices can this user access. As you all know, you'll be monitoring devices, and you also have the option to restrict the devices that a user has access to. For instance, if you are configuring a role and configuring a user profile for a user who you expect to work on a particular segment of the network, let's say you expect them to work on mission critical servers, then you can just create a group of those mission critical servers and make sure that this user only has access to that. So you can configure everything likewise and then click on save. Once you do that, your user will be saved. So this is how user roles, user profiles work in OpManager Plus. Now, you might have noticed while I was entering the password that there was a checklist on the side which was guiding the kind of password I create. You can customize that here under password policy. Here you can enforce rules like a minimum password length, you can enforce password histories, can do all sorts of things with your user passwords. This applies for local authentication, obviously, because that's where you are configuring the password. So that's that. This is the how you can create roles, profiles, and then enforce password policies for local authentication. Let's go back to the presentation. So let's talk about additional user authentication measures. In addition to the primary authentication methods that I mentioned before, just before, you can also enable SAML or security assertion markup language authentication or two-factor authentication on top of your primary authentication methods. So in SAML authentication, you have two components. There's a service provider, and in this case, service provider will be OpManager Plus, and there will be the identity provider. Identity provider can be a third-party service like Okta, ADFS, Azure, Jump Cloud, OneLogin, etc. And every time your user wants to log in, the service provider will communicate with the identity provider and verify the user credentials there. Similarly, you can also enable two-factor authentication on top of your local or local authentication. So let me show you how you can configure these with OpManager. Let's go to the product. Under settings, under general settings, you have authentication. Choose that. Here is also where you can configure your radius server and AD. So let's select SAML. So first of all, you need to configure OpManager Plus with your IDP or identity provider. You can copy paste the data from here or download a certificate and upload it into your IDP. After you do that, you'll have to configure the IDP's details into OpManager Plus, and that you can enter here, or you can just import a certificate. Now you have to make sure that the name ID format you're giving here will be the same thing that you configured for your user profile. So in that case, it means transient and persistent are usernames, and email ID is the email ID. So you have to make sure the email ID or the names that you're configured in OpManager's user profiles are the same email IDs and names that you configured with your IDP. That's how the data is mapped. So anyways, this is how you perform authentication. Now we have two-factor. So this is how you perform SAML authentication. Now we'll talk about two-factor authentication. Everyone knows what two-factor authentication is. So once you check this box, you'll be asked to choose the authentication mode. You can choose authenticator apps, or you can choose email. If you choose email, you'll be asked to configure the mail server settings. I'll show you where you can configure that. And if you choose authenticator apps, right now there won't be any changes. But the next time you're logged out and logging into OpManager Plus, you'll be asked to configure your authenticator apps for two-factor authentication. So this is how two-factor authentication works. Let me show you how you can configure the mail server settings. Under general settings, in settings, you have the first option, mail server settings. Select that, and you'll be able to configure server name, port, timeout, the email ID from which OpManager Plus has to send it, and so on. So this enables OpManager Plus to send email notifications. Therefore, enable two-factor authentication with emails. So these are the two authentication methods in OpManager Plus. So now we have learned to create user profiles and then secure them. Let's learn. So the prerequisite part is done. Now you can start up with discovering the devices and the components of your IT infrastructure to start monitoring them. So to do that, as you all know, most network monitoring softwares or solutions have two means of collecting device information. You can use agents installed in a device to collect information about a device, or you can use agentless means like network protocols to collect information. So OpManager Plus can do both. So let's discuss the agentless means first. And for OpManager Plus to collect device information in agentless means, it needs device credentials. So that's what we're going to talk about next, device credentials. So there are different kinds of credentials that OpManager Plus uses to collect information from different kinds of devices. For instance, SNMP credentials are useful for OpManager Plus to collect information from network devices and all sorts of network devices. WMI can be used for Windows devices, CLI can be used for Linux devices, and so on. So once you configure these credentials, and these will be different for your different sets of devices. And I'll show you how this works. So every time you configure this credential, you can store them in OpManager Plus. And when you start a network discovery, OpManager Plus will use these credentials to unlock these devices, so to speak, and gain information from those devices, monitoring information as well as device information. This will allow you to discover, classify, and then start monitoring these devices. So credentials are very important part of discovery. Let me show you how this works. Again, under settings, you have discovery settings. All things discovery will be listed here, and you have credentials right here. Select credentials, and you'll be able to see the existing credentials for OpManager that we created for OpManager Plus. And if you want to add a credential to this, just click on Add Credential. Here you'll be asked to specify the credential type. I want to create a SNMP v3 credential type, and you can create a profile name for this. So let me say this is SNMP v3 credentials for all the routers in my branch office. So I'm just going to name this routers branch office. There you go. You can provide a description if you want. Then you'll be asked to this is the credentials that you are specifying here, the username, the authentication methods, encryption methods, and passwords respectively. So let me just provide a username. Username. There's like multiple authentication methods like SHA, MD5, and etc. I'm choosing SHA, and I'm adding the password. Retype the password. Similarly, encryption, the password. There we go. Once you click save, so this credential is saved here. Now you will be able to use this later for device discovery. So you can create all sorts of credentials right here. This is how it works. Now that we created the credentials, let's start discovering devices. So discovery in OpManager Plus refers to the process of finding and adding devices or interfaces. And you might ask me, what all can OpManager Plus monitor? And the answer is simple. If it has an IP address and if it's connected to your network, then OpManager Plus can monitor it, discover it, and monitor it. Let's explore some of the discovery mechanisms in OpManager Plus. So before I show you this in the product, I'll tell you there's multiple means of discovering your network components with OpManager Plus. You can add IP addresses individually as shown here, or you can add them in bulk using the mechanisms listed here. And then while the discovery is running, OpManager Plus will use credentials to try to establish connections with those devices and gather information from those devices. Discovering mechanisms are listed under settings. Under discovery settings, if you want to add a single device to server, just choose add device/server. This is the first option under discovery settings. Select that. Here you will be able to specify the IP address of the device or maybe the DNS name. In any case, this will allow OpManager to ping the device, to reach the device. After that, you'll be able to specify the credentials. So once you specify the credentials, OpManager Plus will unlock or establish communication with the device and gather information from the device. This is how you add a single device to server. For bulk discovery, you have this option called network discovery. Select that and you'll be able to see the existing discoveries, and to create a new discovery, select new discovery. And yeah, here you go, different mechanisms. So for IP range, you can specify a start IP and end IP, and OpManager Plus will discover all the devices or the discovered devices or detected devices between these IP ranges. For subnets, you can specify the subnet and OpManager Plus will discover the devices in that subnet. You have import from AD, where OpManager Plus will import devices from the Active Directory, and CSV files, where you can basically upload a CSV file containing information about a device, and OpManager Plus will discover those devices. So we also have an option called import from service now. This is basically a way to import devices from your help desk solutions. We'll explain more about integrations in OpManager and help desk integrations in the fourth part of the street training. So be sure not to miss that. Let's just do a mock discovery right now. Let's call this discovery 3 because I've already performed like 2 discoveries before with this product, and I want to do an IP range discovery. So let's specify an IP address to run the discovery. And an end IP. There we go. You can add multiple IP ranges if you want by clicking the plus icon right here. And then you can specify the credentials. So I'm going to choose the credentials that I created before, this one. And you can select multiple credentials if you want, because there's like going to be multiple types of devices between these IP ranges. So you might need multiple credentials. So I'm selecting 2 now. And once I click discover, this particular discovery scan will run and the devices will be added. But before I do that, let me just show you something else in the presentation. So we've learned how you can basically add a lot of devices in bulk into OpManager Plus. But you might want to fine tune that. You might not want to add all the devices from a bulk discovery. Let's say you want to ignore certain devices from an IP range, or you want to only discover a certain category of devices like switches. So to do that, to fine tune your discovery process, you have something called a discovery filter. So discovery filter allows you to set up rules, and then only you can ignore and discover devices that satisfy those rules. So basically, this allows you to filter the process of discovery and fine tune the devices that are discovered. Let me show you how this works. Before you click discover, you can choose the want to ignore devices option. Select that, and you will be given two actions: ignore or discover. If you choose ignore, the devices that satisfy the rules that you specify here will be ignored. And if you choose discover, the opposite will happen. So I've mentioned that I want to ignore devices from a certain IP range. So I already specified an IP range here. And within this IP range, I want to ignore a certain range of devices. So the type is chosen as IP range. There are other types like IP address, category, device type, device name. I'm choosing IP range itself. And equals, the condition is set as mentioned as equals for IP range. Is the only condition available. And then you can specify the start IP and end IP of the IP range that you want to ignore. So I'm choosing minor glitch. 1 second. And done. Here I can add the end of this IP range. And when you click add, you can see this particular discovery filter has been added. And I can add more filters if I want. I also mentioned that I only want to discover the switches from this particular run of discovery. No, let's say I just want to discover routers from this particular run of discovery. So I'm going to choose discover devices option right here. And then for type, I choose device category, because category contains things like routers, switches, servers, etc. And in condition, I choose equals. So now I'm going to write router, type router right here. See, you'll be able to choose router from the options. Choose router. And when you click add, the other this filter is also added. So what does this mean? This means that OpManager will ignore devices from this particular run of discovery and will only discover routers. Now when you click on discover, the discovery process will start, and you'll be able to approve and ignore devices right here. So this is how discovery, network discovery, works in OpManager Plus. So yeah, this is how it's going to look like once the devices are added to OpManager Plus. You'll be able to see all the devices. You'll be able to approve and ignore them as required. So we've now created a discovery process, right? The discovery profile. I've given it a name and all, if you remember. So you'll be able to see it here under settings, under network discovery. You'll be able to see all the discovery runs I've created. See, this is the one I just created. This is, so see, the discovery has been completed successfully. Basically, no devices has been added in this run of discovery because it was a mock discovery that I just ran to show you guys. But yeah, if the devices are discovered, they'll be listed here, unapproved, ignore devices and all will be listed here. So anyways, let me move on to the presentation. We can schedule discovery processes. So now why would you schedule the discovery process? This can have multiple uses. So basically, let's say your network will experience a lot of changes throughout a month. You might add, there might be a couple of new devices in the network, or a couple of devices might be missing, so on. So you want to make sure that the monitoring inventory in OpManager Plus is also updated like this. So for that, you can schedule a discovery run. You can create a discovery profile. You can attach filters to the discovery profile and then schedule it so that it runs periodically and keeps the monitoring inventory updated. So for that, you can use discovery schedule. So to schedule a discovery process, you can choose the clock icon right here. Select the clock icon and you will be given a discovery schedule tab. Here you will be able to schedule the discovery process. So let me say I want to run my discovery every fourth Sunday of a month. So here from the options, once, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, I'm going to choose monthly. And monthly, I don't want to do it on a single date of the month. I want to do it every day wise, every fourth Sunday. And that too, I want to execute at 11 o'clock. So night at 11 o'clock. So I'll be able to specify the frequency of the schedule right here. And then I'll be able to specify the what OpManager Plus should do in case any changes are detected. So in case a new device is found, what should OpManager Plus do? Should it add it and start monitoring? Should it simply add it as an unmanaged device, or should it not add that device? This you can specify. I'm going to choose add as unmanaged. And similarly for devices, removed from a discovery profile. Again, you can choose to do nothing, delete, or unmanage. I'm going to choose unmanage. So that's the discovery rule. And then you have email notification also. If you configure the mail server, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be able to enable email notification for changes made to your network. Click on save. And this, yeah, you can see this monthly schedule is ready. Now, this is how you schedule a discovery. Similarly, you have discovery reports. Discovery reports will list whatever happened in that discovery. It will be it'll give you insights regarding the new devices discovered from a particular run of discovery right here. So this discovery reports. Anyways, let's take a quick review of everything we have done so far. We have added user roles. We've secured user credentials. We've added user roles. We've secured user access. We have set up authentication methods. We've created device credentials. We've added device individually and also in bulk. Then we set discovery filters to fine tune that discovery process. We've reviewed discovery process using the reports, and we've also scheduled discovery process. All of these are discovery options which are extremely beneficial and will save a lot of effort and time. But there's one part of discovery that often ends up eating a lot of your time, and that is post-discovery operations. Once discovery scans are done, often you'll be confounded with a list of devices which you have to individually review and then associate monitors to, associate notification profiles. Such things you have to do it yourself manually, and that can end up eating a lot of your time. But OpManager Plus has a feature which will enable you to automate these post-discovery actions, and that's called Discovery Rule Engine. So Discovery Rule Engine basically implements a cascade of events based on predefined criteria. So you can set up criteria, and the discovered components that satisfy that criteria will be taken, OpManager Plus will take an action on those components. So let's say you create a rule to identify a set of devices, and then you identify those set of devices using the criteria given here. And if certain devices satisfy those criteria, then OpManager Plus will perform a certain actions on it. So this is how the discovery rule engine works. Let me show you how you can create a rule in the settings in the product itself. So under settings, you can choose discovery rule engine. You can see the existing rules right here. You can, to add a new rule, just select add rule. So here you can add a name of a rule, description, and the criteria and actions. So let's say in this particular run of discovery, in my network, I have a lot of Linux servers that are hosting applications, and I don't want these applications to fail. And if they do, unfortunately, I want to be known. I want to be notified of it, right? So I'm going to create a discovery rule to automatically. So in case any new Linux servers are discovered by my OpManager Plus setup, I want OpManager Plus to automatically add event log rules to detect application failures. If I want to do this manually, it will take a lot of time for me. So I'm creating a discovery rule to automate this. I'm going to call this Linux server rule. And you can provide a description as always. Under criteria, this criteria is how OpManager Plus will identify the devices that you want this rule to be acted upon. So under criteria, I'm selecting category equals server. So this will mean that all the servers will be shortlisted under this criteria. I need to add another rule now. So this rule is added. I want to add another rule that's saying type equals Linux, and then I click on plus. So what this means is that you have two options: match any of the following and all of the following. If you choose any of the following, both will apply the same ways. So it means that all servers will also be applied with this rule, and all Linux devices will also be applied with this rule. So if I choose any of the following, that's what happens. But if I'm choosing all of the following here, which means an AND function, so only the Linux servers will be applied with this rule. So now we have identified the devices that this rule has to apply to. Now we need to configure what action should be taken if these devices are detected. So under actions, like I mentioned, I want to get notified using an event log rule. So here we have event log rule. Select that and select any application failure. So I can add more actions if I want to. So I'm just adding this action now. When I click on save, this particular rule will be there and it will be enabled by default. So what does this mean? So anytime OpManager Plus now discovers a Linux server, it will automatically associate an event log rule to detect application failures. So that part of my job is automated. So I can create any number of discovery rules right here and make sure that after the post-discovery operations for my network is automated by OpManager Plus. So this is what discovery rule engine does. So let me go back to the presentation. With this, we have basically covered most of the bulk discovery options, general discovery options. We'd like to quickly cover deploying agents with OpManager Plus. So along with the agentless means of monitoring, OpManager Plus can also deploy agents into certain devices to monitor them, to discover them and monitor them. So to deploy agents, you can go under settings, under discovery settings, you have deploy agent option right here. Select that and you'll be able to download a lightweight agent right here. So you can either download it manually and then manually install it to the devices that you want to monitor, or you can push it remotely using the device name and IP address and then the login credentials, or you can choose them from the credential profile that you already created if you want. So this is how you can perform agent-based monitoring with OpManager Plus. So with this, we have covered most of the general discovery processes. Now let's move on to dedicated discovery mechanisms for certain types of devices. We'll start off with interface discovery. So interfaces are the core of any network and they bridge different components. So monitoring interfaces is pretty important. And OpManager Plus has an option to automatically discover all the interfaces of a particular network device, like a router, right? So before I show you how interface discovery works, let me just tell you how after discovery, where the devices will be. So once you're done the discovery, all your devices will be listed under inventory. This is where all your devices will be listed under. And then you have subdivisions like network, where the network devices will be listed. You have one for servers, you have one for storage, applications, and so on. And even under servers, you have different classifications like physical servers, virtualization, IPMI, etc. And on a network, you have other classifications, right? So anyways, let's just see a network device. So this is actually a network device. You select the network device, you'll be able to see the interfaces this network device has. So these are discovered automatically. Now, this is important, but you may not want to actually discover all the interfaces for all your network devices. This can you don't need to not all devices are mission critical. And if you discover all the devices in all the interfaces in bulk, this might increase the load on OpManager Plus server, right? So you have an option to create interface discovery rules, which will basically detail the devices, the kinds of interfaces that OpManager Plus should discover from certain kinds of devices. So this will be easily explained from the product itself. Under settings, under discovery settings, you have interface discovery. Select that and you can see the existing rules already. Let me see. So you can schedule the status right here. To create a new interface discovery rule, select new discovery. Again, you'll be able to provide a profile name, description, etc. So I want to call this branch office rule. So because this is for the interface from a branch office, let's say hypothetically. And then you can define criteria for what devices should this rule apply to. You can do this by groups or by properties. Let's say I want this to apply to my Cisco routers. So choosing vendor equals Cisco, and I want to specify router now. So again, category equals router. So these criteria are added. So now this particular interface discovery rule will apply to the only Cisco routers because I'm choosing match all of the following right here. Now you can specify interface criteria. Again, let's say I want to discover from my Cisco routers only interfaces above a particular speed. So I can choose interface speed here, and then under the condition I can choose greater than. So interface speed should be greater than, let's say, 100 Mbps. Done. I can add more rules if I want. Anyways, so you also have the option to discover deleted interfaces, and once you click on discover, this will start to run. See, this is how interface discovery works in OpManager Plus. So now that we covered that, let's move on to layer 2 discovery. Layer 2 discovery is a dedicated discovery process for your layer 2 devices. So the devices in your layer 2, which includes your routers, your firewalls, your switches, all your endpoint devices, and so on. So you can do this from your seed or core routers, or you can do it from an IP range and so on. The thing with layer 2 discovery, what makes it different from other means of discovery is that once a discovery scan is done, you'll be OpManager Plus will automatically draw a layer 2 map, a topology map of your network. So let me show you how that works. Again, under settings, under discovery settings, you have layer 2 discovery. Select that and you'll be able to specify the discovery type, whether the layer 2 discovery should start from a core device, whether it should start from an IP range or whether it should start from a particular group. So I haven't configured the groups yet. That's why the groups are not available. Let me talk about the core device discovery. So how this works is that OpManager Plus will start discovery from a core router or a seed router, and it will spread the discovery from that device to the devices that are connected to that device. So you might have a switch connected to that core router. So the discovery will run from the router. It will discover the router. It will discover the switch that is connected to the router, and from that switch, it will discover the devices that are connected to that switch, the printers, the user devices, the servers, everything. So this is how the discovery works. It will spread from the center to the outskirts of the network. And so you can provide the name of the layer 2 map here. I'm just going to call it layer 2 test map. And you can specify the root, the discovery mechanisms. You have mechanisms like CDP, LLDP, IP route, FDP, ARP, etc. So based on the mechanisms that you want to use, you can choose the particular protocol right here. Then you'll have to provide the IPv4 address of the router. So I'm providing the IPv4 address right here. There you go. This is a schedule interval. So schedule interval basically, I'll explain this later. After you provide the IPv4 address, you can specify the start IP and end IP for this particular run of discovery. So this is basically to limit the discovery within an IP range. So there you go. I am going to limit this within. One mistake there. Limit this within and there you go. So I can add multiple ranges here as well. So once that is done, you can choose a schedule interval. So schedule interval basically automatically schedule this particular layer 2 discovery within the time that you specify. So this is helpful because particularly network topology can change very often, right? So if you schedule it within 24 hours, it means that OpManager Plus will run this discovery again within 24 once 24 hours has passed. And this means that any changes in network will be recorded, will be automatically updated in a layer 2 map. And you can select credentials right here. And then once you do that, select discover. Sorry, I have to click the plus icon right here to add this IP range. Now that I've done that, I'm free to run the discovery. Select that, and the discovery process is happening. So let me just show you how a layer 2 discovery looks like. After discovery, you'll get a map like this. Actually, we have a map here under demo, an online demo. This is an online demo that you guys can access yourself. So under maps, you have layer 2 map. So after discovery, the map will show up here. So let's select that. See, this is how it's going to look like. So the discovery was starting from this router, and from here it discovered the switch and all the connected devices. So this is a very useful map, and it will be updated based on the schedule interval that you set up. So this is how a layer 2 map works and layer 2 discovery works. So let me move on to the next topic. We're going to talk about virtual and HCI discovery as well as storage discovery. So we're going to speed up a little bit now because of the time constraints. So OpManager Plus has dedicated discovery mechanisms for virtual machines, data stores, HCI, etc. And discovery can be started from your host devices. So let me show you how this works. Under settings, under discovery, you have virtualization discovery. Select that, and you have 3 vendor options right here. So for VMware, you can start your discovery from a vCenter or from an ESX host. So if you start your discovery from a vCenter, then OpManager Plus, if you give the right credentials, that is, OpManager Plus will be able to discover all the ESX hosts, virtual machines, and data stores that are associated with this vCenter. Similarly, if you start a discovery from your ESX server, OpManager Plus will be able to discover the virtual machines and data stores that are associated to this ESX host. The same thing works for Hyper-V and SEN, except that you'll only be able to run a discovery from the server, the host, that is. You have to specify the credentials and click on discover to start a discovery process. And similarly, we have a dedicated discovery mechanism for HCI or hyperconverged infrastructure. We support that for Nutanix and VxRail. The feature for VxRail is in a beta stage right now. In both cases, you'll be able to specify the details of the vRail clusters, the vCenter IP address, and the credentials. You have to specify the address of each component as well as the credentials. So because the address, it's actually the same process for all types of devices. You need to provide a means for OpManager to reach that device, and then you need to provide the keys, right? It's just like you're telling someone to go to a particular place, right? you'll need to tell them the way to reach that place, and then you need to provide them the key to enter. Similarly, for OpManager Plus also, you can provide the address, the way to reach that particular device, and the credentials to access information from that particular device. For Nutanix, you can provide the IP address and credentials here. Anyways, this is how it works, hyperconverged infrastructure discovery. Now, we'll also talk about storage discovery. OpManager Plus can discover and monitor RAIDs, tape libraries, and FC switches for storage. So, dedicated storage discovery can be found under settings, under discovery. Here, add storage device. Select that, and you will be able to specify the type of storage device, whether it's an FC switch, whether it's a tape library, or a RAID. And then you'll have to specify the model of the device. So all the supported models will be listed here itself for your convenience. You can select the type. And then if the model that you want to discover is not listed, you can always request us in support. And yeah, once you specify the model, you can enter the IP address. And yeah, you can add your storage credentials right here. See, and once you configure the credential, you can test the connection and then click on OK to start the discovery process for the storage device. That's how storage discovery works. We also have a dedicated discovery mechanism for wireless LAN controllers. So once OpManager Plus discovers the wireless LAN controller, it will also be able to discover all the access points that are associated with that wireless LAN controller. So you can find a dedicated discovery mechanisms for the wireless LAN controller right here. Add wireless LAN controller. Select that. Again, the same IP address, the device model, and the credentials, and click Add Device. And OpManager Plus will discover the wireless LAN controller. And not only that, you can then further discover the access points associated with that wireless LAN controller. So with one discovery, you'll be able to discover your entire wireless network. So very convenient. Now, there's also dedicated mechanisms, discovery mechanisms for Cisco Meraki, UCS, Cisco ACI, and IPMI. They're all listed here under settings under discovery. See, you have add Meraki, add IPMI, add UCS, add Cisco ACI. So the discovery process for all of this is the same. You just have to provide OpManager Plus with a means to reach these devices or these environments, and then provide the credentials to access information. So now that we've completed dedicated discovery mechanisms, we are moving on to the last part of our agenda, where we'll be discussing discovery options and mechanisms for OpManager Plus's advanced IT operations management or ITOM functionalities. So for that, we'll be talking about ITOM discovery. We'll first talk about exporting flows to perform traffic and bandwidth analysis. Then we'll move on to explain how you can add devices to perform network configuration management. After that, we'll explain how you can add firewalls to a firewall policy analysis and optimization module. That's here. And then after that, we'll cover discovery for our IPAM module or IP address management module. So let's get started right away with NetFlow discovery. So NetFlow module in OpManager helps you monitor, analyze, and manage traffic and bandwidth for your network. So it supports various flow technologies to do this, like NetFlow, SFlow, JFlow, IPFix, NetStream, etc. So to get started with NetFlow analysis and management, you will have to first export flows from your devices into OpManager Plus. So I'll show you how to do that under settings as always. So for this, I will be going to the local setup that we have right here. Under settings, under discovery, you have export flow. Choose that. So here you'll be able to configure the details. So first of all, you have to provide the IP address as always for the device that you want to export the flows from. So configuring that here. There you go. You'll need to, if you want, you can provide an SMP credential. If you've already configured the credentials, we have an existing credential that's been configured for this device. I'm selecting that. After that, you have to verify the connection to proceed further. OpManager Plus will perform a ping test to see if the device is reachable, and then it will check the credentials against that device to see if the information for the device is accessible. See, both of them are a success. So that's how OpManager Plus was able to infer that the vendor for this device was a Cisco. And now you can select the model. So this is selected right here. Now let's click on next. And then you'll be able to select the protocol with which OpManager Plus establishes communication with this device. So this will be a recurring theme for all the advanced IT operations management discovery processes. So you can choose either Telnet or SSH. I'm choosing SSH right now. After that, you'll have to provide credentials for this device. So I'm providing the credentials right here. And next. Now what OpManager Plus will do, it will validate the credentials. So see, the credentials are valid. Once that is done, you'll be shown the commands to be executed and the interfaces. So you can configure and edit it right here. And once you verified all this data, just click on next. And then OpManager Plus will basically show you the flow export, the flow status. So this will take a little while. So let me just show you this, show you how this would look like in the presentation itself. It would look like this. So command, if the process is successful, you'll get this message: commands are executed, flows are received. And once the flows are received, you'll be able to see them under network, under flow analysis right here. See, you'll be able to see all your devices and then also the interfaces. So here, if you click this, you'll be able to see the interfaces. See, and you can go further inside and perform traffic and bandwidth analysis. I'd like to cover this in this part, but time is restricted. And anyways, this will be covered in detail in the fourth part of the free training series. So be sure not to miss that. So this is how you can perform net flow analysis with the net flow module in OpManager Plus. Moving on, let me talk about NCM discovery or network configuration management discovery. So network configuration management module in OpManager Plus allows you to perform, as the name suggests, network configuration management. It'll allow you to perform backups. It'll allow you to monitor the compliance status of your network devices. It'll also help you detect firmware vulnerabilities and so on. So for this, you need to configure, let's say you need to discover network devices, and you also need to set up credentials. So this is one of those instances where the discovery mechanism varies between OpManager and OpManager Plus, because for OpManager Plus, as you know, the NCM module is enabled by default. So you just need to perform your usual network discovery that I mentioned earlier with the IP range and all that, right? Once you perform that network discovery, the network devices will be listed in an inventory, and you'll be able to perform the network configuration management for those devices without any further discovery mechanisms. But for OpManager, you'll have to further perform additional discovery. So let me just show you how this differs between the two products. So we are showing an OpManager Plus installation. So under network, under devices, all the network devices will be listed. Let me just show you the routers. So the routers will be listed here. For these routers, you'll also have an NCM module right here, and all the details will be listed right here. See, this is the configuration management information. We'll be covering this later in the fourth part. Also, you'll be able to see them under network, under config management. See, the devices will be listed right here. So there's no additional discovery process. So there is no way to add devices, because that the usual discovery is how you add devices. But for OpManager, this NCM module is separately licensed. So you have a separate NCM discovery process. So let me show you this with the OpManager setup that we have. So under OpManager, under network, you have config management, which is an add-on with OpManager. And as you can see, here is a difference. Here's a plus icon right here, which means that for OpManager, you have to additionally add the devices into the network configuration management module. So since in both cases, once you add the devices, you have to specify the credentials. So both process can be shown in OpManager itself. So I'll be showing it here. So let's click this add icon, and let's provide the host name and IP address of the device that we want to discover. I'm gonna add it right here. Give me a moment. Right. There we go. I provided the IP address. Now to specify the vendor and the model. So the template name, this is device template. I'll explain what a device template is later on the second part of the free training series. Let's just say it's a model for OpManager to identify your device for now. So I'm choosing the Cisco iOS router. You can specify the series and model and if you want. So you can provide you can do a ping test right now, and OpManager Plus will ping the device and see if it's reachable. See, ping status is success. So you know the device is reachable. Click on add. You'll be asked to apply credentials. This process will be the same for both OpManager and OpManager Plus. So here you'll have to specify the protocol. The protocol is how OpManager Plus establishes communication with the network device, as we explained earlier. So there are multiple protocols for configuration management. So based on the ones you choose, OpManager Plus will have different means of communicating with the device and gathering information. For instance, if you choose Telnet TFTP, how it works is that OpManager Plus will use the Telnet protocol to establish communication with the device, and then it will use the TFTP protocol to transfer the configurations. Similarly, if you choose SSH as your protocol, what happens is that OpManager Plus establishes communication with the device via SSH and then executes show commands on the device to get the configuration details. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to choose SSH, but note that there's multiple options available here. And after that, we can select a credential profile from the list that we've created, or we can just create a new one. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to specify the username. Sorry, that's a password. I'm going to specify the login name. There we go. And then the password, retype it. And in certain devices, you might need to enter the enable mode to get additional privileges to get configuration data and all. So for that, you might need an enable prompt. So an enable prompt is like the different prompts that you add to the device, different prompts that you activate on that particular network device to go into the enable mode or the privileged mode and get that additional layer of privilege. Anyways, so that prompt can be specified here. For this device, this itself is a prompt. You might have to configure the enable username and password. You have two enable password type methods, that is password, no password, and empty password. We're going to go with password right now. And then you can specify the enable password for this device. Actually, for this device, there is no enable mode, so we don't have to do that. But in case your device has an enable mode, you can specify it right here. So all the steps are done. And just select this option if you want to back up the device immediately after updating the credentials. If you want to save and test, just click on save and test. Otherwise, you can click on save. I'm clicking on save and test. So testing will be in progress. And once the testing is done, you'll get this message. The credentials are valid if they are. And then all the other validity will be checked. And this is how the terminal will look like. I just mentioned the enable mode and I didn't show you how this works. So let me just show you that in the presentation itself. So in case you have a device for which there is an enabled mode, you can configure the enabled password and retype that password and then enable provide an enable prompt. So this is how it's going to look like in a putty or something else like that. So the login name will be entered as you specified, the password will be entered as specified, and your prompt will be then entered. And so for this particular device, it's the enable prompt. So then you have to provide the enable password and then this other prompt, enable prompt. So this is how it works. Once you do that, your device will be listed under the network configuration management module in OpManager. This can sometimes take a little time. That's why it hasn't shown up yet. So once it's listed, you'll be able to, under network, under config management, you will be able to see all the, so yeah, actually this is not added here yet, but it's here. Anyways, you'll be able to see them all here and you'll be able to verify the details, configuration details, and I'll be covering this in the fourth part in detail. Let me go back to the presentation and move on to the firewall policy analysis module. So this module in OpManager Plus allows you to, in its most basic functionality, it can allow you to monitor firewall logs. But if you provide OpManager Plus with firewall configuration and rule data, then OpManager Plus will also be able to perform rule analysis and configuration management. So to do that, you have two options basically. You can either forward syslogs from your firewall to OpManager Plus directly, or you can download a syslog file and import it into OpManager Plus. I'll show you both of these processes in very quick because we are running out of time right now. So we'll just showing it to you briefly. So under settings, under discovery, under network, you'll be able to see firewall log and rules. So this is an OpManager setup. I'll be showing it to you in an OpManager Plus setup. Under network, under firewall logs and rules, select that. And you can see the existing firewalls you created, plus the add icon, and you'll be shown multiple mechanisms. You can either do this. So this is for forwarding syslogs, the first method that I mentioned. So you can use CLI to specify the firewall IP address and then execute a set of commands on the firewall so that it will forward the syslogs to your OpManager Plus installation. So you can provide the IP address right here. You can specify the vendor name, the protocol with which communication is established, like I mentioned before. And for certain vendors like Cisco ASA or Cisco PAX, you'll also have to provide the enable prompt, the enable username and enable password and so on. So that's how you configure it with CLI, or you can just import the syslog file right here directly. So I mentioned that you can forward the syslogs. What port does OpManager Plus use to receive those syslogs? That ports as given here under monitoring settings, syslog rules, syslog port. So by default, it's 514 and 519. You can change this if you want to. So that's how firewall policy analysis and optimization works in OpManager Plus. We'll be explaining this more in detail in the fourth part. Finally, when you enabled, one second, when you enabled firewall device right here, once you click show command, you will be getting this particular window. These are the commands that will be executed in your firewall. And once you select execute configurate, the process will be done. Just missed to add that. So now that we're done with that, we have the final part, which is IP address management and switch port mapper discovery in OpManager Plus. So this will basically help you perform what I mentioned, IP address management and switch port mapping. You have multiple means to add IP addresses to your OpManager Plus console. You can add it as IPv4 subnets, IPv6 subnets, supernets, and DHCP servers. And for switch ports, you can directly add it. So let me show you how this works. Again, under network, you have IP management module. Select that, and you'll have your existing list of IPs, and click on add, and you'll be given these options. I want to add an IPv4 subnet. It'll go into that IP section. See, I can add an IPv4 subnet right here. So I need to provide all the details right here, and once I provide those details, I'll be able to add this IPv4 IP addresses from the IPv4 subnet. Similarly, I have similar mechanisms for SuperNet, DHCP servers, and for an IPv6 subnet or site. And for switch port mapper, you have go to switch port mapper and then add switch. So you'll be able to add the switch right here. Again, you can add it manually, or you can import it from a CSV file or discover it like the discovery mechanism that we mentioned earlier. So once that is added, it will look like this on the network, IP management, switch port mapper. All the switch ports will be listed right here. That's how you can perform IP address management and switch port mapper discovery in OpManager Plus. So that's how that works. And with that, we've come to the end of the first part of our free training series. Please share your valuable feedback to us using the polls option in the webinar. I'll wait for 2 minutes for you to perform the polls. Share your feedback. Triggered all the polls in the webinar. So if you want to share your feedback, please participate in the polls. OpManager Plus is globally recognized and decorated by trusted and popular review platforms around the world. And these are some of the recent recognitions we've received in the network monitoring, IT infrastructure monitoring, and application monitoring market segments. Now, we're proud to announce that we have been recognized by Gartner in its 2024 Voice of the Customer for Observability Platforms report. And we are chosen among the top vendors as a customer choice vendor. So we are proud to share our achievement with you guys. If you want a complimentary copy of this particular report, you can vote yes in a new poll that has been triggered. So we're triggering another poll. If you want this report, please choose yes. And we'll ensure that it finds your way to your inbox. You can get yourself certified as an OpManager associate by registering for a test. This usually costs around $49, but if you attend all 5 parts of this webinar series, you can access the test for free. So you got a good start now. You can attend all the remaining 4 parts, and you can access the course for free. Again, the link for this will be shared with you in the Q&A panel. If you want to stay in the loop about everything new in IT operations management, you can give us a follow on LinkedIn. We're actively sharing insights, articles, and infographics related to the ITOM space. So you can join our LinkedIn group by either visiting this link or scanning this QR code. So once again, we thank you for attending our free training series, and I hope to see you guys for the next part. Goodbye.